It's different window. We're just going to wait for a few more guys to come online, then we'll start. How are you guys? Thank you for taking the time to join this webinar thing that we're doing. So to start, I'm going to start by sharing one or two things that I think we might all want to see. Okay, so yeah, I realized we actually need somebody else handling the control panel on this thing. There we go. Okay, so yeah, sorry, it's a one-man show, so it's one of those. So the reason why we're having this discussion today is essentially because we want to talk about this whole notion of road mapping that you're talking about. I think some weeks ago we talked about how we've been trying to do this whole startup thing, and yes, some teams have been functioning, others have not been functioning, things have not been working out, and we, over the past 2 or so weeks, went through this whole process where we were terminating some of these teams. And the one thing that we realized that has been a problem, of course, as entrepreneurs, people are frustrated. It's fair and fine, and we are working on solutions for those things. But the other problem has been that as entrepreneurs, we sort of have been working as artists, working when we feel inspired to work, when we want to actually do things. And, when it gets hard or it gets boring, we just opt to not do it and just, decide to do things some other day or some other time, or when that next feeling of enthusiasm and energy comes back. And the honest truth is, if you're trying to build a business out of the startup, or if you're actually trying to actively build a startup that is going to grow and scale, then we can't work that way. And so that's the reason why we're doing this whole road mapping. Now, so in the next probably 20 minutes, I'll go through the tool and the basis of this, and then we'll go into like 10 minutes of a few questions, if there are any questions. I don't think there will be, because it's a very simple tool, but that's how we'll do it. So the whole point behind road mapping is very simple. When you meet people who are starting up with an idea, in most cases, when you ask them what they're doing, or what their startup is about, or what the idea actually is about, they have a torrid time trying to explain it, right? That's the reason why the elevator pitch became so popular, because it's really hard to condense all that stuff into 30 seconds, or if it's a 2-minute pitch or whatever. But the reason behind that is mostly because when you start working on something, we focus on what we need to do right now, what it has to become right now, and what people are saying about it there and then. We never really take the time to stand back to look at what this might be, or what we want it to become, or why we want it to grow in that manner. So road mapping has, it starts with this very basic, very interesting, rather, if I should say, process where you look at what you're doing, whatever startup it is, and you say to yourself, where do I want this to be in the next 2 years? So what sort of business is it going to be, right? How many users am I going to have? What locations am I going to be operating in? How much am I turning in revenue? And things like that. So not just what the product is and where it is, but everything else around your startup. What sort of culture do you want to be having? What sort of employees do you want to be having? What sort of things do you want to have by then and be achieving, right? And it's all very visionary and nice, and it's all in like really broad, brush strokes, and it has to be that way. And I know it's difficult sometimes because by default, you try and look at what you have right now and try and then, extrapolate that into the future. You shouldn't do that. Think about what exactly you want, why you're doing this. If you're building a startup like SciSci to liberate the internet, then you ask yourself, why are we doing it? Why do we want to liberate the internet? What do we want to have or to see in X and Y time, period. And so it's sort of like when you're trying to drive and between say Bulawayo and Harare, and that's the reason why I put up this image on your screen. When you're driving to Harare, you're in Bulawayo, fine, you're in your car and all of that, and you know what your destination looks like. You know what Harare looks like. When you're driving into the city and you see the skyline and things like that, you know what it looks like, right? But as you start to progress, you don't focus on what's going to happen between Gweru and Kwekwe. Is there going to be a roadblock? You start by focusing on one very basic and simple section of that journey, right? So let's think about Bulawayo to Gweru. So you start preparing actively and planning actively for that section of the journey. And so that's the reason why we're talking about this, how you can only see for the next 200 meters when you're driving at night. You turn on your headlights and you're driving. That's all that you can see. You know that your entire journey is some 500 k's or so, and you need to know that destination. But to get there, all that you can do at any one point in time is focus on the 200 meters. So that's what we want to do. So after you've done this whole vision mapping process of thinking about where you want, this to be, and it's a very feel-good experience. You get all energized and feel like you're going to conquer the world. That's great and fine. The next thing that you need to do is to then look at it and say to yourself, where am I now, right? So what do I have right now? What is there within my startup? Do I have a website? Do I have a team? Do I have a business model? Do I know how I might be making money? What sort of version of the product do I have right now? Is it is it an Excel sheet? Is it like a rudimentary app that has bugs? Is it whatever it is? You simply need to take stock of what you have and what you have done right now, and then you go through this process now of thinking about, what does it take for me to move from where I am right now to where I want it to be. So let me just share the screen. I believe we all have this tool. So we designed this Excel sheet. It's I think the one that you got has 2 workbooks. It's a very basic, very simple tool, so I'll go through it. Once you guys start using this and we see and look at how you're adopting it and the challenges that you might be having with it, we're then going to turn it into an actual web tool. So with guys, Michael and a few guys were actually working into turning this into a tool that hopefully other entrepreneurs will also be able to use. So when you look at this thing, and just please follow my cursor. I think you can see it, yeah. So if you're using this tool, you start with this how to workbook, right? It's very simple, right? When you click to the corner of each page, I put down notes there, right? To sort of explain basically what I'm now saying in this video. So you've thought about where you want to be in 2 years. Yeah, that's not spelling error, it was intentional. Most people didn't see that for some reason. Bad job. But you've thought about that, right? And then you've done this whole taking stock of the status quo, what you have right now, what is there, what is working, what is not working. You then start looking at it and say to yourself, look, so to get to these 2 years, what should happen in a month? So where should I be? Should I be having a product, right? In 3 months, should I be having X number of users, right? At what stage of your business, what phase are you going through? And you don't have to stick to your generic, validation, beta testing, those generic stages. You can define it in whatever way you want. So if you look at this example, the one of the stages that's there is validating and testing assumptions, right? It's sort of cutting across 2 or 3 generic, phases of building whatever your startup or your business is. So, and ideally, we talked about the 200 meters. So all that you can do now is to pick up that very next phase. So in this example, it's your validating and testing assumptions, and focus on that, because that's the only thing that you can plan in detail for. You can't plan in great detail for the next 3 months. There's so many things that will change. You're going to test this, or you're going to find out this, or you're going to get new data on some of these things, and you're going to realize, look, I was wrong. So the plan has to change. It's a very live sort of plan, right? So you take this phase in your business, right? And then you go down here, so you follow your arrows, where you have, so where I'm highlighting. So that's your phase. And what you then do is you look at this phase and you say to yourself, so what things in general do I have to achieve in order for this phase to be completed, right? And these are what we call, or what I prefer to call, your missions. So in this case, because this is a person who's validating or testing assumptions, you have filling out of the business model canvas, you have filling out the Javelin board, and actually getting out of the building to talk to people. You have building out your MVP, so your very rudimentary version of the product, and getting your first 5 people to use it and give you feedback on it. Right? These are very general, like very broad missions, right? So you then go on to the next stage and you break down each mission into tasks. Remember, this is still in the yellow highlighted phase, so this is still preparatory. You don't need to think about timelines or anything. Just really brainstorm and think holistically about the tasks that you have to achieve in order to complete that mission. So for example here, you have the mission to fill out the business model canvas. One of the tasks will be to download the business model canvas, the template from the internet, to fill it out. There's a chart in this office. I think it's behind me, you'll see it. So those are 2 different tasks. I know there are a lot more tasks to do with the BMC, but this is just to explain. And then from there, so you have your second task, your Javelin. So, have a Javelin meeting, TK, or whoever you're working with, to sort of go through your assumptions, assign the riskiest assumption and the success criteria for your test, and to think about who you're going to test this Javelin, or this concept or these assumptions on, right? And also, naturally, maybe you want to do a web test as well. So you want to send out a survey, or you want to use like a landing page or a coming soon page. So you might want to purchase a domain name. And so there are a good number of tasks that you have to think about and put them down. So that's what you do in this section. And then from then, you then decide, and this now depends on the kind of work schedule that you have, because this is student entrepreneurship, right? So you're a student, but you're also trying to build a business, and we understand that. So you think about how long your execution period is going to be. So do you want to be executing this in a week-on-week basis? So at the end of the week, that's when you review to say, what have I done? Or do you want to do, on a daily basis? So if it's a daily basis, you'd actually have your Monday there and your Tuesday there, and your Wednesday going down like that. So I opted to use a week-on-week basis because it's easier, and I didn't want to be able to use some other tool that I have to manage my tasks on a daily basis. So once you define your periods, then you start moving your tasks from your preparation or preparatory phase into your execution. Now you notice that the way that you're breaking down your tasks when you're preparing, it's not in chronological order. It's basically based on the mission. What you're now doing is you're saying, this week, what tasks do I have to achieve? So you pick those out and you move them to what I call the burn down column phase of the chart, right? And so you put them down, basically grouping them within each execution period. So in this week, if we were using this example, you'd be downloading the canvas, filling it out, purchasing your domain name, and you notice this was a task from a mission that's somewhere down there, and maybe it's a very complicated thing, and you actually want to start by having a web based test, right? So you actually need maybe a designer and a developer to do the landing page. So you might want to build a team of 3 people. That's entirely up to you. Remember, this is your startup, right? So once you've put down your tasks, and ideally you want to plan between 14 and 16 tasks for your first week. The reason why I'm talking about 16 tasks is because you ideally want to assign 2 tasks per day, right? You say, maybe today I'm going to do task number 1 and number 2, and then the next day I'm doing 3 and 4, and it goes on that way. Such that, if you were to be asked to say, look, by the end of the week, what have you achieved? You can actually go to your task list and say, oh, look at this. On Monday, I was only focusing on 2 tasks, and I completed those. And on Tuesday, I completed these. And Wednesday, you keep going in that direction. And sort of that's how you are able to then be able to account for your progress as you're growing a business or as you're actually building this. Again, it's a stressful process because there are so many things that need to be done. But if you're able to break down your tasks in this way and you actually group them on a day-by-day basis and you actually achieve them, then that in itself is a therapeutic thing for an entrepreneur. Being able on Friday or Saturday to look at your chart and say, oh, look, I went through 14 out of 16 of my tasks, right? You then have that self-motivation, that willingness, that drive, that passion that, those artistic or rather artist-like entrepreneurs are always looking for. You then become that guy who always feels like and always is in the zone, always wants to do this and be able to achieve it. So that's basically how you use this tool. It's a very simple tool, very basic, but it's all about trying to achieve this. And again, because you have a very hectic schedule, I'm assuming, you're picking out 2 tasks to do in a day. You honestly can't tell me that you can't dedicate like an hour or 2 to doing stuff relating to your startup. Like if you can't, then honestly don't even start this whole process because there's no point. You'll start and then things will change and then you have to redo your test. It just becomes hectic, you see. So it's a very practical, very basic way of making sure that you're able to deliver and execute your tasks on time and actually be able to plan out or plot out progress. When we eventually build the next version of this tool, so yeah, the tool in itself is also going through its own test, in case you haven't noticed, and you are naturally testing it. And it's also going to become, part of a suite of products that we're building we're trying to build a set of entrepreneurial tools that people can use to start a business within the African context. So, in the next version of it, you're actually going to assign value to these things, such that at the end of the week, you might say, look, of my missions, I have achieved 60%. And so this is how fast my startup is growing. And now you're going to be able to measure actual growth of a startup before you're getting to revenue. Because, most of the tools that you have out there measure growth based on revenue or number of users or number of this and that. Nobody really looks at this whole, how fast are we growing or how steadily are we growing before we actually start making money. I mean, not everybody starts making money in the first year, right? Some of these startups are moonshot sort of startups. So that's basically how you use this tool. So as you can see here, I'm using this tool to essentially plan out for every function or every sort of thing that we're building within NeoLab as like the functional infrastructure stuff. So you have Neon, our hosting platform, and I think I sent this together with the tool such that you're able to sort of go through it and see how it's applied. So this is the example that I'm hoping you would then, be able to edit. So you go there, you delete, you put your own missions and you keep going that way, right? It's a very basic tool. Like, honestly speaking, if you're not able to use this, I don't know what then would work for us. And so the other things that I did not put in the example, which are here, are your status column and your comments. So your status here might be, completed or done or whatever, shown or whatever you use to mark something as being completed. And also your comments. So there are things that you're going to learn that you can't exactly be putting up in a diary. So, you might learn, maybe it's a skill. So, WordPress works best for landing pages or, clearly define the kind of people that I'm going to survey, because these are things that you're going to reflect on, in the next iteration of your roadmap, right? So you do this for the first, say, 2 or 3 weeks, right? And once you burn through those, you're going to redo the whole road mapping process, and you'll be able to reflect on this to say, in my first week of actually starting up, I learned the following things. I learned users are totally into this kind of product, or people really don't like, being called at 6 p.m. about some weird stuff that they don't understand, or, whatever key learnings that you're going to stumble upon, these things are going to be valuable when you get to tell your story, or when you reflect and you meet the exact same challenge, or the same challenge but in a different context, in a different level of importance, or whatever it is. So that's the reason why the comment section is there. It's really important. You need to distill the things that you've learned and put them there, because very soon you're also going to be advising other startup founders on how to do this or how to start up. And once you have something that's growing, you're going to have people coming to you and asking, how do you do this without capital? The other thing that I would want to talk about is how you do your mission. So because you are in this phase where you're focusing on the product, and it's about the product and nothing else but the product, you need to make sure that your missions are more holistic in their nature. So don't just focus on the product. So you can, if you're looking at this example, you have the mission, right? So the product mission, the one in orange, it's about the product, right? So next is something else, and this is for Neo, yeah. So you have issues to do with the website, you have educational campaigns about the product, there's visibility. So your social media, you're going to be doing blog posts and things like that, and recruitment. So actual HR functions, and there could have been a fine. I think actually is, let's see, transaction processing. So that actually has to do with how I'm handling finances and things like that. So make sure that your missions for every phase or stage that you're working on are holistic. So you're cutting across the whole spectrum of things to be done. I know this would be a challenge for the more technical founders. So people who have a technical background, I know they hate doing business related tasks. They think this stuff is mundane. But the thing is, even if it's mundane, it still has to be done. And that's the reason why you have to put down the tasks. So don't try and cheat yourself out of like removing tasks because you don't want to do them because they're boring. It has to be holistic. Whether you then fail to do them and then you decide or you realize you need to recruit somebody, it's well and fine. It doesn't mean that you have to execute everything. It doesn't always have to be 100%. In fact, it's a learning process. So you look at it like, this week I managed to do like 85% of my tasks. What can I improve? And can I do a time audit? So what am I spending my time on? How exactly am I using my time during my day? And you find that your next week becomes better and better and better. So that's basically how you use this tool. And the thing is, we've designed this tool for startups, so people are actually building businesses, but it also still works for, whether it's school or you're trying to plan out your career, and, it's the exact same thing. You look at your how-to, so where do you want to be in the next year? What sort of job or sort of place do you want to be? And then what you have right now, and then you translate it, even if it's relationships. So what sort of girl do you want to date in the next 3 to 6 months? And then, what sort of person do you have to become to be that guy that girl would be interested in? And then what kind of person are you right now? So are you, that elephant, if that's the thing that people count? Are you considerate enough, or are you? I don't know what people consider when you're doing relationships, but I'm just trying to put a point across here to say you can use this even for your personal life as well. You see, and then you take down your missions. I need to, improve on the wardrobe. I need to change my crew or the people I'm hanging out with. I need to read more French novels. If the goal is into that sort of thing, and you break it down into tasks and then execution. So I need to read X and then Y. It works. So don't look at entrepreneurship as let's build a business thing, and that's the reason why this was made available to people in the NeoLab community as well, not just people in the fifth build who are actually building startups, because it also applies to whatever you're trying to build, whether it's yourself, whether it's basically whatever it is. Entrepreneurship is a lifestyle, and we always need to remember that. It's a lifestyle. So I think we're almost done here. I was going to go through the rest just to show you the kind of thing that is there. So it applies. And again, I know this is very colorful. If you're colorblind or you don't like colors, like, you can change all of this stuff. It's all in Excel. It's very basic. So that's basically what this tool is about. It's very simple, very basic. Let me see if the tools, sorry, the Q&A section is okay. Let's see if I can enable this just now. Yeah, next time we'll get somebody else to be manning this part of the broadcast. Okay, so I don't think it will allow me to enable the Q&A now. So how do we do this? Yeah, it won't allow me to enable Q&A during the presentation. So what you could do is you could send your questions in whatever way. So after I'm done, like done, I'll also just entertain a few questions that people might have. And if these questions are very important, or rather, you could do it this way. If you're in the groups, then you could ask your question there and I'll respond. If you're not in the groups, then yeah, you could figure out a way of asking the question. So the last part that I wanted to talk about is this. All right. Okay, so let me just enable that. There we go. So again, we talked about the car driving and the headlights, how you can only see the first 200 meters of the journey, and you need to focus on that. You need to know the destination, but you need to focus on that. And this just serves to reiterate how that first month or that first execution period is very important. You don't need to be able to see the entire path from today up until like in 2 years' time. What you need to focus on is what you're doing right now. Are you doing it as quickly as possible? Are you doing it in the best manner and fashion as you can? And so, we talked about, I think we've talked about, not in this presentation, but in this other stuff that we've been doing, we've been talking about how to do a roadmap or a timeline in your deck. And so I thought I would just also show examples of it here. So there are a few startups that I've been working with. These guys so these are just extracts from decks from startups that are, I think these are the guys from Gaza, from SkyGeeks. Yeah, so they're startups that are based in Gaza. They're working at an incubator / co-working space called Gaza SkyGeeks, and they have some pretty cool ideas and concepts and startups. So as I was saying, so this is pretty cool because it's actually modeled around a road in itself. This is how you can map out your year or 2 years. I think this is so month 4 to month 9. I don't know, you can do the math, but it's over a very lengthy time, period. So what you then have to do is to focus on, your, in this case, they're talking about idea generation, customer interviews. So these are their phases, right? And so they're able now to roadmap and use that tool to put down all the tasks that need to be achieved for this particular section. So this is an example. If you are not as artistic as this, or if you don't have a designer friend, you could use Excel to create something that's like this. It's more detailed. It's using, I think how, we all know how to do this. Like if you don't, there is no one way of doing this. Just get onto the internet, do a bit of research, you'll be able to find this, or talk to the other founders. So I mean, we have about 26 startups in our ecosystem. Talk to people, ask questions. Like, I don't understand why people think that vulnerability is a weakness. I mean, in most cases, you can actually use it as a strength, being able to open up and say, guys, I don't know how to do this. How do I do it? And you have people coming up and saying, look, you could do it this way, or if you tried this, or tried that. It's a learning process, and we're all trying to learn. So this is an example. My first hardware prototype, first app prototype, customer interviews. I was actually, I think these are the guys that I was mentioning. I'm not sure. I think they actually successfully raised funding about 2 months ago. And they started back then, they didn't have much, but they used what they had, and they were able to plan out and show direction. It's like one of the most important things. You don't want to be part of a team that doesn't seem to be going anywhere, right? Yeah. So this is another way of doing the roadmap. These guys just decided to use boxes and use the colors to make it look cool. Yeah. So this startup is called Labelle. I don't know what language that is, so I don't know how to pronounce that. So this is up to this is in 2 phases. So this is actually, I think, over 2 years. But you sort of see how they want to take it across, and it works. I'm forgetting what this startup does, but that's a way of doing it. Or you could use this so more of vertically aligned way of showing sort of the task that you need to do. So the idea asks specialist persons. They're doing their market data analysis. They're launching a Facebook app, so you see how they're doing their Javelin there. They define their MVP. So this is a healthcare, pretty cool. Contact doctors and healthcare people, I think, I don't know. But you see how it's growing. There is a plan. So even if it's not moving as fast, they can say, look, we've done X, Y, and Z, but here is the plan. That's what is important. There has to be a plan, not this wishful thinking, aiming in the dark nonsense that some founders and startups sort of find themselves in. But you see how this is being done, and this is very important. Knowing where you're going and what you need to do right now to get there is one of the most important things that as a founder you need to have. So yeah, that's what I wanted us to talk about. Yeah, the BMC that I was talking about. So this is what we have. We actually have 3 of these in NeoLab space here in Blaauw, so you can come in and use these anytime if you need to be doing that, if that's where you actually are. So again, if you have any questions, looking at the group right now. If there are any questions, please do shoot them across. I'll just chill here for like 5 minutes. Then if there isn't, thank you so much for taking time out. I know most people thought this was going to be like a 2-hour thing where we get into like some serious stuff. We want to keep these webinars as short as possible to make sure that you learn as much as you can, but still have that focus to then be able to implement it. Those who are working on their roadmaps, please make sure you send them through to me by end of today's Thursday, so by tomorrow, because over the weekend we are starting on a whole lot of different stuff. There's a lot of legal work that's going to be going on. Tomorrow we have another webinar that's almost similar to this, but it's on how to digitally sign contracts, because this whole business of people downloading, printing it, signing it, scanning it, uploading it, I think as entrepreneurs we can find easier and faster ways of doing it. Before I forget the last thing, so I talked about then being able to use an application to manage the tasks. So I use Any.do. So you then have your tasks, and I can be checking them out as I go through them. You can also use your Google Calendar or even a basic calendar that you have. It's easier to do this because you get your reminders. It's time that as entrepreneurs we begin to automate parts of our lives. I know you have amazing brains and you're super intelligent and you can basically just have all of this in your brain, but come on, if you can offload some of these things to your phones, to your devices, then let's do that. It makes it easier for you to plan. I think that's the reason why as Africans we're mostly late for things, because we think we can do everything and our brains are super awesome and create like that. Use a scheduling application. There's so many of them, and if people actually want us to have a different conversation about that, so about tools that you can use, so productivity tools in the African context where Wi-Fi is not everywhere, send me an email, and the guys will sort of plan to have that, or it can be done through Hives or whatever other option. But yeah, so I don't think there are any questions, which is good. This is a very simple tool. But if you do have any questions, do email me. You have my numbers, but let's do this. We want to start moving, and we need to start moving forward. There's a lot of stuff that's going to be coming in next week and the week after that and into 2016 that's going to be really exciting. But we need to prepare for it. And it's time that the world knew what we've been doing for the past year, even though it's not as great as we wanted it to be. Yeah, so thank you again. It's 6:35, so it's 30 minutes straight. Again, looking forward to hearing from you guys. All right, have a great night.